TechDaily.ai, your source for technical information. We're taking a deep dive today into, well, a pretty significant cybersecurity incident impacting a UK government agency.
And we're also going to look at the bigger picture, sort of how organizations across the UK are actually holding up against these cyber threats.
Exactly. We'll be exploring the specifics of a recent cyber attack on the legal aid agency. That's the LAA, the agency handling legal aid in the UK.
And then we'll kind of zoom out, look at the findings from a pretty comprehensive survey on cybersecurity breaches generally.
Yeah, our goal is to really understand, what happened at the LAA, what the potential fallout looks like,
Right.
and then connect that to the broader trend, see what the data tells us about cyber resilience overall.
Makes sense.
Okay, let's get right into it then. This legal aid agency situation. When did this actually first come to light?
Well, the initial signs of an attack, they were detected back on Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025. It affected their online digital services
And these services, what were they actually used for?
by lawyers and providers.
Yeah.
They were pretty critical.
Hmm.
It was the main way legal aid providers recorded the work they did.
Yeah.
And crucially, how they got paid by the government.
Right, so pretty essential system. So in the very beginning, what did the LAA think might have been compromised? What was the initial story?
Initially, they told the legal aid providers that some of their details, including like financial information for their practices, might have been accessed.
Okay, so focus on the providers themselves at first.
Yeah. But it turned out to be, well, quite a bigger than that.
How so?
Well, fast forward to Friday, May 16th, 2025. That's when they discovered a much more serious breach.
Yeah.
It became clear the attackers had got into, and this is the quote, a large amount of information relating to people who had applied for legal aid.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds much more concerning. Applicants, not just providers.
Exactly. And we're not just talking about recent applications either.
How far back did it go?
The LAA confirmed that sensitive personal data belonging to individuals who'd applied for legal aid, well, it went all the way back to 2010.
2010, seriously.
Accessed and stolen.
15 years of applicant data. That's staggering. That's a huge amount of personal history potentially exposed.
It really is. It definitely underscores the gravity of these kinds of breaches.
Absolutely. So, okay, once they realized the scale of this thing, what steps did the LA take?
Right. Well, they acted on several fronts. The immediate priority, obviously, was trying to strengthen the security of their systems. They also notified all the legal aid providers about what had happened. Importantly, they started working closely with the key agencies.
Like who?
The National Crime Agency, the NCA, and the National Cybersecurity Center, the NCSC.
Right, the UK's main cyber body.
Exactly. And they also informed the Information Commissioner, the ICO, who handles data protection.
Good. It's reassuring they brought in those specialists. What about the people who actually rely on legal aid? Was anything done to make sure they could still get help?
Yes, they did say they had contingency plans in place.
Okay.
The idea was to ensure that people who urgently needed legal support could still access it, even with the disruption.
That really highlights the need for those plans, doesn't it? You can't just stop essential services.
Definitely not. Every organization needs to think about that before something happens.
So for the legal providers who couldn't use their normal systems, what kind of guidance did they get? It must have been chaos for them.
Yeah, it sounds like it. The LAA issued quite specific instructions. For civil cases needing urgent action, they told providers to contact customer services directly.
Okay.
For crime applications, since they couldn't get the usual date stamps, they were told to just note the intended submission date in the system once it was back up.
Right.
And the LAA caseworkers would handle the backdating. There's also specific advice for monthly submissions, too.
So a lot of practical nuts and bolts advice to keep things moving, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. Trying to manage the immediate fallout.
Okay, but what about the individuals, the people whose data going back to 2010 was stolen? What advice were they given?
Right, that's obviously critical. The main advice was to be extremely vigilant for any suspicious activity.
Like phishing attempts.
Exactly. Be really cautious about unexpected messages, emails, phone calls. Be extra careful about passwords, especially if they think one might have been compromised. And the key thing was, independently verify the identity of anyone contacting them before sharing any personal information. Don't just trust the caller ID or the email address.
That's always good advice, but especially crucial after something like this. It's so easy to get caught out when you're worried.
It is. And they gave some specific examples of things to watch out for.
Oh, yeah? Like what?
You know, the classic red flags. Official-looking emails asking you to reset passwords.
Yep.
Messages saying you're entitled to compensation or need to confirm identity. Emails full of tech jargon trying to sound important. And anything that pressures you to act immediately. Urgency is a big sign of a scam.
Yeah. Those are definitely the hallmarks. It's amazing how often they still work, though.
It is. And the methods are getting more sophisticated.
Yeah.
There's concern about AI being used to make impersonations even more convincing.
That's a scary thought. Okay, what if someone got a message, maybe from a scammer, that actually contained an old password they had used? That would feel pretty real.
Yeah, that could be alarming. The advice there was, don't panic, but act fast.
Meaning?
If you're still using that password anywhere, change it immediately.
Right.
And crucially, if you reuse that same password on other accounts, which, let's face it, many people do change it on all those accounts too, right away.
That password reuse habit is such a killer, isn't it? One breach can compromise so much.
It really is. So beyond watching out for suspicious messages, what else were people advised?
They were told to actively monitor their online accounts. Look for anything unusual.
Like what sort of things?
Difficulty logging in, maybe settings being changed without you doing it, seeing messages sent from your account you don't recognize, that kind of thing.
Okay, so keep an eye on your digital footprint. And if someone did suspect an account was hacked.
The recommendation was to go straight to the National Cybersecurity Center's website. They have specific guidance on how to recover a hacked account.
Right, the NCSC again. Step-by-step help.
Exactly. It's good that resource is there, but it does make you wonder, like, how many people actually know about it or use it when they need it?
That's a fair point. Awareness seems to be a persistent issue.
Were any specific tools mentioned, like ways to check if your email address has popped up in other breaches?
Yeah, they mentioned online tools, you know the type, where you can enter your email and see if it's shown up in known public breaches.
Like, have I been pruned?
That kind of thing, yeah. And also that similar features are often built into antivirus software or password managers people might already use.
Okay, good to know those options exist. Now, interestingly, the Law Society weighed in on this LAA incident, didn't they? What was their take?
They did. The Law Society, representing solicitors, basically pointed the finger at the LAA's antiquated IT system.
So they're saying outdated tech was a factor.
That was their view. They said the incident showed the need for, quote, sustained investment to update the LLA's IT and maintain public trust.
That definitely raises questions about infrastructure and funding, especially for agencies holding so much sensitive data.
Absolutely. It suggests a potential vulnerability that attackers might look to exploit.
Okay, let's shift gears then. Let's look at that wider cybersecurity landscape from the survey you mentioned. What's the overall picture? How many organizations are actually getting hit?
Well, the survey paints quite a broad picture. It found that just over 4 in 10 businesses, 43% specifically, and about 3 in 10 charities, 30%, reported experiencing some kind of cyber breach or attack in the last 12 months.
Wow. So that translates to, what, a lot of organizations?
Yeah, huge numbers. Roughly 612,000 businesses and about 61,000 charities. It's still very widespread.
Those are still really high figures. Was that an increase or decrease compared to before?
Interestingly, for businesses, that 43% was actually a decrease from the previous year's survey, which was 50%.
Oh, okay. A slight improvement there, maybe.
Possibly. But for charities, the rate, that 30%, stayed pretty much the same.
Yeah.
No real change there.
And the types of attacks. What are organizations mostly dealing with? Is it still phishing?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Phishing is still king, unfortunately. It remains by far the most common and most disruptive type of attack.
What were the numbers on that?
It affected 85% of businesses and 86% of charities that reported having any incident at all.
Good grief. So if you had a breach, it was overwhelmingly likely to involve phishing.
Pretty much. It just reinforces all that advice we were just talking about for the LEA victims, doesn't it?
It really does. It's just this persistent, grinding threat.
Yeah. And the feedback in the survey showed organizations find it really resource intensive. Just the sheer volume, the investigation needed, the constant staff training. And like we touched on, there's that growing worry about phishing getting smarter, more sophisticated.
Yeah, the AI angle is worrying. So technical defenses plus user education, constantly.
That seems to be the mantra. Now, the survey did look at what organizations are doing to protect themselves. Any good news on cyber hygiene?
Yes, actually, there were some encouraging signs, especially among small businesses.
Oh, really? Like what?
They showed improvements in things like doing cyber risk assessments, getting cyber insurance, having formal security policies, and having business continuity plans that actually cover cyber incidents.
Okay, that is good news. Maybe the message is getting through to some smaller players. What about bigger charities? Same progress.
Unfortunately, not quite. The survey found a bit of a decline in some key activities among the higher income charities compared to the year before. A decline. In what?
Things like formally identifying cyber risks,
Mm-hmm.
reviewing the risks coming from their immediate suppliers,
Right.
and even having a formal cybersecurity strategy written down.
Why the decline, do you think?
Some of the qualitative feedback suggested budget limits might be playing a part, which is worrying.
Yeah, that suggests a potential gap, even within the charity sector itself. What about overall priority? Are bigger companies taking it more seriously?
Generally, yes. As you'd probably expect, larger organizations put a higher priority on cybersecurity. We're talking 92% of medium businesses and 96% of large ones saying it's a high priority.
Makes sense. More resources, maybe more to lose.
Just
Did the survey look at where companies get their cyber advice from?
It did, and this is quite interesting. The most common source for both businesses and charities was still external IT consultants or cybersecurity providers.
Still, not official sources.
Not primarily, no. It indicates a potential, well, underutilization of free, trusted guidance from places like the NCSC. Very few actually name the NCSC as an info source.
That is surprising. Are they even aware of the NCSC or its campaigns?
Well, awareness of campaigns like CyberAware was higher than awareness of the NCSC name itself. CyberAware was the most recognized government initiative.
Okay, so the campaign has some cut through.
It does.
Hmm.
But concerningly, awareness of CyberAware has actually been gradually declining since 2021.
Ooh, not great.
No. And awareness of other key guidance, like the 10 Steps to Cybersecurity or the Cyber Essentials scheme, that was even lower and also showing a longer-term decline.
So there's official guidance out there, but organizations, especially smaller ones maybe, are leaning on their IT providers or consultants instead. Why do you think that is?
The feedback suggested a few things. Smaller businesses often just rely on their existing IT partner, maybe even family members sometimes.
Right.
It suggests maybe they don't know the official guidance exists, or perhaps they lack the confidence or resources to sort of digest it and apply it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a definite call for clearer, more tailored, actionable guidance from government, with some feeling the current stuff is maybe aimed more at bigger, more complex outfits.
That makes a lot of sense. Guidance needs to be usable, right? What about supply chain security? That seems like a huge area now.
Yeah, critical. But the survey found pretty low levels of organizations formally reviewing the risks from their immediate suppliers, let alone the wider supply chain.
Really? So they're not checking their supplier security much?
Doesn't seem like it, not formally anyway. And cybersecurity often wasn't a major factor when they were buying new software either.
Hmm.
It seems there's a real challenge in understanding and managing those supply chain risks. A lot of trust is just placed in suppliers, including digital service providers, often without thorough checks.
That feels like a ticking time bomb, doesn't it? One supplier breach could ripple outwards.
It certainly could. Then there's cyber insurance. Is that becoming standard practice?
Uptake was pretty consistent with previous years, actually. Not a huge jump.
Okay.
And for those without it, I don't know.
The main reasons were it's not seen as a budget priority and simply a lack of awareness that it's even an option.
Interesting. And even those with insurance don't always claim.
Right. Feedback suggested some don't, even when eligible. They do a sort of cost-benefit analysis, worrying that making a claim might just hike up their future premiums too much.
So weighing the immediate payout against potential long-term costs. Okay. What about the basic technical stuff? Malware protection, backups.
There was actually a slight decrease in businesses deploying some of those fundamental controls compared to the year before.
A decrease in
Yeah.
things like malware protection.
Yeah, and restricting admin rights and doing secure offline backups, not just relying on the cloud.
That's not good. Those are the basics. Feels like maybe some complacency setting in or perhaps cost cutting.
Could be a mix of factors. It suggests the positive trends seen before aren't always being maintained.
What about outsourcing? Are companies handling security themselves or farming it out?
A lot of outsourcing going on. Almost half of all businesses reported outsourcing at least some of their cybersecurity functions.
Mostly smaller companies.
Particularly common among small and medium-sized businesses, yeah.
Okay, and finally, the survey looked specifically at cybercrime, right? Beyond just breaches. What did that show?
It estimated about 20% of businesses and 14% of charities were victims of at least one actual cybercrime in the last year.
And any particular type standing out?
Well, ransomware among businesses showed a significant increase compared to the previous year. That's a big worry.
Definitely. Ransomware is nasty. But phishing was still #1 overall.
Phishing remained the most common type of cybercrime, yes. And sadly, there was a high rate of repeat victimization.
So if you get hit once, you're more likely to get hit again.
That's what the data suggests. Unfortunate, but perhaps not surprising if vulnerabilities aren't fully fixed.
And the cost. What's the financial hit from these crimes?
The average costs, excluding basic phishing, were significant. Same for cyber-facilitated fraud, which often uses phishing as an entry point.
Right.
But the median costs were much lower, suggesting a smaller number of really high-cost incidents are skewing the average upwards.
Got it. So some incidents are incredibly expensive, dragging that average up. Okay, let's pull this all together then. How does the LAA attack connect to these broader survey findings?
Well, it connects in several ways, really. First, the LLA breach is just a stark, real-world example of what the survey shows. These attacks are common, and the impact, especially with sensitive data, can be severe. Second, that comment from the Law Society about antiquated IT. That speaks directly to the survey, finding that cybersecurity maturity varies hugely, and sustained investment is crucial.
Yeah, it highlights potential weaknesses.
Exactly. Third, all the advice given to the LLA victims, watch out for phishing, manage passwords, monitor accounts, it's precisely the kind of preventative stuff the survey data shows is vital for everyone.
Right, the basics are still fundamental.
Absolutely. And finally, while the LEA reports didn't mention ransomware specifically,
Right.
the fact that the survey shows ransomware is significantly increasing makes incidents involving large data sets like the LEA's even more concerning. That data becomes a prime target for extortion.
So the LAA incident isn't some random outlier. It's really a symptom or an example of these wider vulnerabilities and trends that the survey picked up.
I think that's a fair way to put it, yeah.
Okay, so to wrap up our deep dive today, what are the main takeaways for you, for our listeners?
I think there are a few key things. One, this major breach at a public agency really hammers home the ongoing risks, especially around large volumes of personal data. Vulnerabilities are real and have serious consequences. Two, the survey data shows a bit of a mixed bag. Some progress, maybe, in basic hygiene for small businesses, which is good, but persistent challenges remain, especially, it seems, for charities, and in tricky areas like securing the supply chain, and perhaps most worryingly, in the awareness and use of official guidance. People aren't necessarily finding or using the help that's out there.
Right.
And third, the threat landscape isn't static. It's evolving. We're seeing more sophisticated phishing, potentially AI-driven, and a definite uptick in ransomware. So vigilance and adaptation are key.
That leads us to a final thought, really, for you, our listener. Given this increasing sophistication, this potential for disruption to essential services, the exposure of our personal data, how can organizations, public and private, genuinely prioritize and invest properly in robust, up-to-date cybersecurity? It's clearly not happening consistently everywhere.
And on an individual level, in this world where we're all so connected and, frankly, targeted, what more can each of us realistically do to protect ourselves, to protect our data proactively?
Vital questions, things we all need to keep thinking about.
Definitely. Continuous attention is needed.
This Deep Dive is sponsored by Stonefly, your trusted solution provider and advisor in enterprise storage, backup, disaster recovery, hyperconverged in VMware, Hyper-V, Proxmox cluster, AI servers, SA365, a turnkey security appliance, and public and private cloud. Check out stonefly.com or email your project requirements to sales@stonefly.com.